Hello and welcome back to Rage Gaming and a Wilds Talk video. Today we're talking about your favorite weapon at the end of Wilds. What are the most popular or least popular weapons in our own community? We've run polls for this for different periods throughout Wilds' life, at the start, during the middle, and the last one we did was Title Update 3. So it's been a little while. We've obviously had some major weapon changes, and we've had multiple weapon rankings for the speedrunners to see their power levels and who's using what, how, and why, and comparing their output. Things have drastically changed for a few weapons in Title Update 4, and that's been reflected, in fact, in this poll, in these results. So in this poll, you could pick 3 weapons. I picked longsword, dual blades, and charge blade if you're wondering. Let's take a look at the poll, working our way up from the bottom to see where you guys have voted. And at the bottom we have heavy bowgun and light bowgun, to basically no surprise. These 2 weapons have been at the bottom or very close to the bottom from the start of Wilds all the way to current. This is hilarious because usually weapons and their power level greatly impacts their relevance, their popularity. Light bowgun has been arguably the strongest weapon through all of Wilds from start to finish, starting with gore all the way to like gog and current stuff and the recent things with arch-tempered arkveld and proof of a hero. It's an extremely effective and easy to use weapon in Wilds, and it's still so unpopular in our own community and the community at large, to be honest. Meanwhile, heavy bowgun is basically the same amount of popularity, and that's disappointing because between the 2 of them, the heavy bowgun actually can block, it can guard, perfect guard, clashes, it can offset, it can actually access the new mechanics of monster hunting in Wilds specifically. Meanwhile, the light bowgun has nothing, it gets nothing. In fact, from Rise, it's way less flashy, way less mobile. You're not really messing around with the ammo that much, and its unique mechanic in Wilds is a gauge system that's almost identical to the heavy bowguns one, except the heavy bowguns has different options and is a bit more interesting. So mechanically, heavy bowgun got more of a facelift in terms of the Wilds mechanics. Light bowgun lost a lot from Rise, and despite the fact that it's incredibly effective, it's very unpopular. I do think that the identity separation between them is largely lost, and I do think the heavy bowgun isn't doing some interesting stuff with ammo and tools and what are you dealing with and how can you change that and swapping many different ammo types. We've only seen that a little bit with the recent Proof of the Hero mission, since you can go back to the camp, change your loadout, come back. So these 2 being unpopular all the way through Wilds is very important to take away from Wilds and hopefully for the expansion. I want to see light bowgun get a major uplift in new mechanics and new options. I want to see its identity separated from the heavy bowgun way more drastically. And then for the heavy bowgun, I suppose quality of life, smooth of gameplay, maybe like make it less heavy in a way, and bring back the variety and fun of the different ammo types. These 2 clearly need it, more so than any other weapon that we're going to talk about today. So jumping forward to hunting horn, that's a surprise to me. At 12th place with 4.85% of the vote, hunting horn is in an insane state just like light bowgun, and since say Title Update 3, it has shot up in terms of power, with the hilt stab giving you a kind of shoulder bash to deal with stuff. Even in recent updates, dropping those echo bubbles has become smoother and more effective. The weapon's function is just a lot better at the end of Wilds compared to where it was at the start. It's flashy, it's fun, it's a really unique take on hunting horn that's somewhere in the middle really of World and Rise, where Rise went crazy with the hunting horn as a unique sort of aggressive playstyle. I do think it's a shame that it's not so popular in our community, but I suppose it makes sense. It's still quite a mechanically involved weapon. There's still those sort of support connotations around it. But I do think this is a bit disappointing because I feel hunting horn is in an insane state and it's had a great progression through Wilds. All I would really hope for hunting horn in the expansion is some new mechanics that are fun to engage with, because at its base level what they've got there in Wilds, what they've introduced here, they've smoothed out, it's great. Above that in popularity for us then is the gunlance with 6.34% of the vote. This one makes sense to me. Gunlance is really cool in Wilds, but it's actually just not changed that much throughout the updates and the weapon adjustments that we've had. It's also a bit of an awkward one when you're dealing with these faster, more aggressive monsters at the end of Wilds. You're not able to get those longer combos out, which, makes it difficult to use the weapon. There are some recent benefits in the big shield really helping you guard against bigger attacks. And the gunlance obviously shines when you get to really lean into shelling and ignoring hit zones and getting away with that. But to be fair, as Wilds has progressed, we've seen better hit zones, especially in regards to element. We've seen the weapons that really lean into that scale in popularity and relevance there. Gunlance just hasn't had any of that. So it started as one of the more popular weapons and has slowly fallen, which is interesting. So I suppose it is a weapon that could do with some uplifts in the expansion specifically. Next we have Hammer with 6.46% of the votes. This also makes sense that it's lower overall at 10th place, but I still am disappointed by that. Because ultimately Hammer started in a bleh position. There was a lot about it that didn't make sense. Like you'd run up and try to sneak attack a monster and miss. Like come on. You'd land a focus attack and the follow-up attack wouldn't even reach the monster that's not even moving. So it was quite a frustrating weapon in the base version, I would say. And you lost a lot of mobility and silliness from Rise, obviously. But they really addressed this. It saw multiple weapon adjustment major passes and was the main focal point for, I think it was around Title Update 2 when they really went at this. It got way more offsets, it got new options. I do think it's actually in a really cool state right now. There's a good while there where, for example, Cotton, he just couldn't put the thing down. I do wonder whether the output potential of the weapon has caused issues. We think of the weapon rankings where Hammer has been lower on that list pretty much every time. Ranking after ranking from like the middle all the way to current. Maybe part of it is the fact that with the Hammer, you want to generally bonk the head, right? But recent examples like say Arch-Tempered Arkveld, you want to be hitting the chain blades as much as you can. I think of like dahaad where you're trying to break off the parts along its body. New Udra where it can be quite hard to reach that face and the beak. Maybe it would be cool if it had more tools to make the hammer hits on the head worth it. More accessible with new mobility options. It clearly still needs a bit more of a mechanical push. Next up then, let's talk about Bow, which has 6.96% of the votes, over 300 now. It's getting pretty decent. Bow has had a interesting history with Wilds where it was one of the most popular weapons in the beta due to how ridiculously strong it was, and then they slapped it down to earth where it was underperforming partly because of the hit zones of all the targets of the game being so bad for element. Times where it would shine would be much like light bowgun when you have a hit zone that's awkward and difficult to reach for normal melee weapons. And if the element hit zones were even slightly relevant, it actually did really well. This first sort of appeared when we had Zoshir and the wing arms that were out of reach for a lot of us. Bow didn't really get the changes, or any changes really, that we were kind of expecting for title update after title update and so on. It wasn't until recently where it did actually see some attention, and then it has shot up in relevance with the recent weapon rankings. So I suppose it not being towards the bottom anymore makes sense, and at the end of the day, the weapon is mechanically very satisfying, challenging and rewarding. The flow state you can get in with the bow and that discerning dodge and all the little hops and movement you can do, I do find it in a mechanically fun and satisfying state. In regards to the expansion then, I'm not sure what it could get to actually improve it. What is it missing? So let me know your thoughts on this. More surprising to me though is Longsword, roughly in the middle of the pack here with 7.12% of the votes, almost identical to the next one. Which is interesting because Longsword, I feel, is in an insanely good state. It started unbelievably strong with a lot of new additions, arguably some of the most additions to its base moveset out of all the weapons. But I kind of know part of the issue here. It doesn't matter if you have new follow-ups in the red gauge. An entirely new Crimson combo in the red gauge, the new Helmbreaker follow-up, and the hyper armor involved. If at the end of the day, you're basically building to red gauge and doing Spirit Blade 1, Crimson 1, and repeating that for max DPS. Recently, we have seen cases where you have to do so many counters back to back with the Special Sheath EI counter that you don't even have time for that. It's still extremely fun, and they have made like little subtle changes to the weapon, like improving its Special Sheath time so you can hold that counter time, or the input latency that used to be a problem. But really they haven't had to add anything to Longsword. Largely it stayed the same throughout the whole game. So in that way I suppose I can see how popularity and interest might have waned, but I don't necessarily need new moves and new options in the expansion. What I would like to see is more of the kit being actually encouraged, so they probably need to remove the best DPS being the Crimson 1 Spirit Blade 1 combo. Right above it then, basically the same, was Insect Glaive with 7.14% of the vote, literally one more vote at 312 total. Insect Glaive right in the middle in terms of popularity, like 7th place. It's strong, it's effective, it's fun. But much like what we just said with the longsword, it does fall into the trap of being an essence builder and dumping rotation. These days you do see a lot more ground combos, the occasional bit of air movement, which is fun. And the fact that you've got a more reliable offset at the start of that descending thrust. They did just start to dabble in a little bit more control and options outside of, say, the usual claw grip, which remains an issue. In the expansion, I would like to see for Insect Glaive less of a focus on that descending slash, and maybe they could encourage that by giving you an even stronger descending slash, but only after performing this or that combo. Maybe we get some new aerial moves to encourage that playstyle, which was obviously made a big deal when they sort of removed it in the beta, and all that feedback forced them to bring it back in the launch. So yeah, more encouragement of everything outside of the descending essence dump attack, and some new stuff in terms of aerial attacks or movement, that'd be really cool. Next, I am thrilled to say that Switch Axe is high up in the list again. It is 6th on the popularity here with 7.67% of the votes. Yes, I just said that. 335 votes total. What a change this is from the Title Update 3 poll we did, where it was basically at the bottom. It was one of the most popular weapons when we did our first poll, then became one of the least popular. Now it's back up where it should be, towards the top, because of the changes they made finally in Title Update 4. If you're unaware, the quick version is they made the axe and sword mode a bit more relevant, especially the sword mode. The sword counter no longer animation locks you, so you can roll out of it and actually counter the follow-up attack instead of being stuck in this double swing, which is weak in itself. In a previous update, they also made the offset more reliable, as it was one of the worst offsets out of all of them. And importantly, there is a lot of power in the rising and overhead combo for your standstill combo while you're fishing for opportunities to still full release. But it's so much better than basically going full release and then finding the next opportunity as soon as possible to full release, even hyper armor trading, because it's the best thing you can do. It's such a fun weapon that ultimately became a one attack spammer. This change was a great step away from that. But I don't think they're done. I'm still not doing the zero sum attaching, which I miss. I'm still avoiding the X mode as much as possible. And realistically, I'm mostly just doing overheads and sword counters outside of full releases. That is better than just one move, but it's not much better. So let's keep it going, more changes for the moveset, and encourage more things outside of full release. Alright, this is crazy. Look at it. Yes, you're reading that right. That is Lance with 7.76% of the votes, 339. Lance is the 5th most popular weapon from this poll from you guys. Who are you people? Where did you come from? Lance has been one of the least popular weapons through Wilds the whole way, even though they've made major changes to it from beta to launch and multiple title updates, where I've read hilarious amounts of damage increased, raw up, elements scaling up on so many moves, new moves added, better encouragement of the counters. And it still was so unpopular, and in the weapon rankings with the speedrunners basically at the bottom. It was not until the last change and the changes we've seen with Title Update 4 where suddenly Lance has been not at the bottom but like 8th place or something like that, which is still not near the top, sure, but to go from that's the bottom performing weapon in Wilds every update, it finally sees the changes it needs, it finally sees output relevance. It's definitely a high for the weapon, on top of the fact that the perfect guarding and big attacks being mitigated better and the fun of doing the stalwart guard, you know, pressing into the beams. All of this is encouraged even more, putting Lance in a surprisingly cool and fun state. So the popularity for it has boomed. Congrats, Lance players. Alright, here's one that makes complete sense. Dual Blades at 4th place for us, with most popular is 8.33% of the vote, 364 total. Yes. Dual Blades are awesome, and with the element stonks rising, of course Dual Blades stonks rise with it. At the launch of the game, Dual Blades was a really cool concept in this version, letting us keep the counter of rise but in a new way with a perfect evade, which makes complete sense. I love the way that it has that follow-up that costs no stamina to do, and the fun like little slickness you can do with movement by turning on and off the focus mode to do that like double dash. The addition of focus strikes for wounds, letting us build stamina back up and build demon gauge at the same time, with that being improved to allow us to choose not to do the spine spin so we can stay at the optimal location. That on top of the smoothness of being able to swap between blade dance and demon flurry, swapping between archdemon and demon mode by attacking, and subtle improvements to, say, the demon boost mode after that perfect evade, being easier to maintain by lasting longer at a base level, by not dropping off anymore when you sheath the weapons. New combos being made possible after a perfect evade, so you can go straight into Blade Dance 2 and then 3, and it feeling incredibly powerful as targets are more vulnerable to elements as Wilds has progressed. To me, Dual Blades started in a fun concept but needed some ironing out. They quickly addressed that, and then gave it more and more multiple updates in a row. It felt like I'd already had my cake and ate it, and they were just giving me more cake. So if you haven't tried Dual Blades in Wilds, it's at an all-time high, and this popularity makes a lot of sense. Just like Charge Blade at 3rd place with 9.75% of the vote, 426 total. God, Title Update 4 was so good for this weapon. It's interesting because Charge Blade actually had some ups and downs. The starting version, it was way too much about the Savage Axe mode and Power Axe mode, chainsawing combos, and basically spamming ED2 as much as you could. It had some downsides in the, longer animation lock with that, but you were able to sort of bull through. They made some changes that they walked back a bit by nerfing the Power Axe a bit too much, but it did encourage some benefits to, hey, AED in the new follow-up attack, the occasional bit of SAD, with them heavily buffing that. This gave birth to the Morph loop, which is a really fun gameplay loop, but ultimately went against what they were saying they were doing with the changes, which was preventing us just doing 2 attacks back to back. So we got further changes, and now we're able to so quickly pull ourselves out of the axe mode, animation cancel even during ED2 to interrupt the second swing, with faster transformations combined with obviously rapid morph. You're able to go from sword and shield to axe mode and back again so quick. This lets you actually interact with the guard point again, which is so fun to pull out right as you're about to be hit. It feels so slick and smooth, it hits like a truck, the many versions of the Charge Blade feel great, elements are great for hit zones and that's good for Charge Blade, and in terms of weapon ranking performances, it's been a top performer so many times in a row. For the expansion, all I would say is that a bit more encouragement to the sword and shield mode, and like giving us a reason to ever take the time to buff the sword itself, that'd be cool, but I do find it in an incredible state. Much like Sword and Shield, which is at 2nd place at 11.24% of the vote, 491. That's a huge jump forward. Look, Sword and Shield has been basically 3rd or higher in all our popularity checks in our own community. So it doesn't surprise me that it stays high. I mean, it's just been in a great state, and they've not really made changes to it recently. It's just a great all-rounder weapon, never having you be locked down. Being able to use items was super good for Omega, obviously, and it's just very forgiving by being able to pull out that perfect guard at the drop of the hat, go from one attack to a different attack, swap between combos. They encouraged perfect rush a lot more, so that came back in. The charge chop still is really strong and fun, and you just never really held down. It's always done well in the weapon rankings, never say like top 3, but often 6th or 5th, so its performance has been good the whole way. I suppose in the expansion, just giving it some new cool attacks, maybe giving it more combos and options with the shield for like a bunk playstyle like your hammer, or an entirely new combo. They could really do whatever they want. It's in a great state to just have more added to it. But that brings us to the final weapon. Obviously, it's still Greatsword, of course, as the top weapon in popularity on the channel, largely because Josh has been covering Greatsword for the longest time, and so we have a big Greatsword audience. Greatsword itself has been in a good state from the launch, accessing all the new features, and actually dodging changes longer than most weapons in the game. Eventually though, it did get some power pushes to our surprise, even improving true charge slash's damage. Josh was talking to me about that period though, where you weren't doing a lot of true charges because there just wasn't time to. So them encouraging the damage behind that makes sense. They want it to be part of the sort of core gameplay loop. It's the iconic move of Greatsword. So I think whatever they choose to do with this weapon in the expansion, it already had access to everything. If they add new mechanics, I'm sure it's going to get access to them. But it's clear they want to keep the relevance of true charge slash, so I don't expect that to fall away, even if they add new moves, combos, or other mechanics. But yeah, there you have it. That's our final popularity list. Let us know then. What would you like to see change or be added to the weapons that you main? What would you like to see in the expansion for the weapons? Until next time then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, and thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.